All right, we're going to move on to Chapter 2, Section 6, Adding and Subtracting Fractions with Unlike Denominators. A couple things there. Denominator, that is the number on the bottom of a fraction. So in this case here, 5 is the denominator. And so what we're going to be doing is adding numbers or subtracting numbers like this, where the numbers on the bottom are not the same. Because remember, if you want to add fractions, the denominators have to be the same. Then you just add across the top, giving us 3/3. In this scenario, there's something else you have to do. Let's go straight ahead and find or use our two methods of finding the least common denominator. The least common denominator is just literally exactly what it says. We are trying to find the smallest number that is common with the denominators. So we have the number or the fraction 1/8 and the number 1/10. Thinking out loud, there are lots and lots of numbers that 8 and 10 can multiply into that give us the same denominator. And that's what we need to do. We need to multiply 1/8 by something and multiply 1/10 by something to generate the same denominator. Now let me just take a quick side note here on what we're actually doing here. We are taking the fraction and multiplying it by 1. Now, when you take anything multiplied by 1, you should get itself back. That's called the identity property of multiplication. Now, what's special about this is that the number 1 can literally be whatever you want it to be in terms of a fraction. In other words, if I wanted it to be 4/4, I could use 4/4. I could take 1/8 times 4/4, and that would keep it the same value, giving us 4 on top and 32 on the bottom. This and this, 1/8 and 4/32, are the same exact fraction. Notice we just multiplied it by 1 using the identity property. So that is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be finding a very specific 1 value to multiply both 1/8 and 1/10 by to generate denominators that are different. Notice 1/8 and 4/32 are the same number, same value. However, the denominators are different. That is our goal, to change the denominator. Method 1 for finding the least common denominator, otherwise denoted as the LCD, would be quite simply to just multiply our numbers up until we find something in common. So looking at 8, all you have to do is multiply 8 by every digit 1 through, say, as many as it takes until you find a common number. So 8 times 1 is 8, or 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3 is 24, and we're going to just keep multiplying by digits, until we reach a number where we think we might have something in common. If we move to 10, 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, and so forth, until you reach a number where you think the numbers have a commonality. 8 can multiply into 40, and 10 can multiply into 40. We have just found the smallest number that both 8 and 10 multiply into, finding the least common denominator. Once we've found the number 40, all you need to do is go back to your fractions and change it. 1/8, we're going to multiply top, or just multiply it by 1 rather, but the one that we're going to choose to multiply it by is going to be the number 5. 5/5. What that does for us is give us 5/40, the common denominator. Now we move to 1/10. Now this is not going to be 5/5 because that won't give us to a denominator 40. We need to multiply this by 4/4. The number you multiply can be different. Notice it's just the number 1. This is also just the number 1. So multiplying across the top, 4 over 40. Notice we have a common denominator. Now we can combine them to give us 9/40. So the least common denominator, that is method 1 to adding or subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Method 2 would not be to find the least common denominator. Rather, it would just be to find a common denominator. Now, this can seem a little easier for some students. However, as you get older and a little less motivated to do more work, you may find this to be an easier method. So, doing the same process or the same fractions here, we have 1/8 and 1/10. Now, to find a common denominator, quite easily, all you need to do is multiply the bottom numbers. Take the denominators and just find their product. 8 times 10 is 80. So 80 we know is going to be a common denominator for both. So all you need to do is multiply both numbers. What is 1 times 10? That's 10. 10 times 8 was 80. And going the other direction, 8 times 1 is 8. And 8 times 10 is 80. There you have it. If we wanted to combine these using addition, you would have the numbers 18/80ths, which they're both even will reduce to 9/40ths, the same thing as earlier. A little easier, however, there will be examples where this is not ideal. There are your two methods. Let's do a couple examples. Find the least common denominator using either method. So 12 and 18, let's use the previous method where you just multiply. So we're going to take the number 12 and the number 18 and just keep going up until we find something in common. 12 times 1 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24. I'm just going to go a couple digits until I think I've found something. Now let's go to 18. 18 times 1 is 18. 18 times 2 is 36. 18 times 3 is 54. Oh, I could have stopped at 36. Notice, we have the same multiple, the same number, 36 and 36. So therefore, our least common denominator is just 36. You will get questions that just say, find the least common denominator. All you have to do is write the number 36 there. Let's go to 6 and 15 using the same method, 6 and 15. Let's go up with 6. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. And I'm just going to keep going again. Fifteen times 1 is 15. 15 times 2 is 30. And I'm done. Now, as you get more and more comfortable with this, notice how I stopped at 30 with the 6. I could have kept going to 36 and 42 and so forth, but I knew the number I was dealing with was 15, and I knew that 15 goes into 30. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's add or subtract the following numbers. 8 and 5, we cannot combine these because the denominators are not the same. So let's find a common denominator. Let's use the other method where we just multiply these numbers together. That would give us 40. So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 3 is 24. We have 24 40ths. Plus 5 times 8 is 40, and 5 times 1 is 5. Adding these numbers, you get 29 40ths. If you can reduce, please do. 1/6 and 3/10. Notice we are subtracting fractions, so what I'm going to do first is leave, add, change. Leave the front number, change it to addition, and change the sign on the back. Leave, add, change. Now I have, if I look at this, I have the same sign for both. I'm adding same signs, so therefore you just need to find the sum of the numbers, and I know the sign is just going to stay negative. 6 and 10. Let's go and use the other method where we just kind of count up. 6 and 10. 6 times 1 is 6, and I'm going to keep going until I know when to stop. 30. Once I find a number that ends in 0, I know it's got to be a multiple of 10. Oh, there it is. But always check to make sure there weren't any numbers before that that are in common. Once I've got the two numbers, I will multiply to change the number. So 1/6. How do I get that to 30? Well, I need to multiply top and bottom by 5, making this 5/30. 10. How do I change 10 to 30? Well, I need to multiply top and bottom by 3/3, giving us 9/30. Again, like I said earlier, all you need to do is combine the numbers. 9 plus 15 is 14, and keep the denominator the same, and there you have it, 14/30. We're going to do one more example where you have mixed fractions that you're going to need to subtract that have uncommon denominators. So the first thing I would tell you to do when you come across an example like this would be to change both fractions into improper fractions. Really, in any case, change any fractions you can to improper. Improper fractions are so much easier to do math on that I wouldn't recommend doing too much math as mixed fractions like these are. So whenever you can, please just change it to improper so you don't make any mistakes. So the method again to do that is take the bottom number times the front, giving us 15, and then adding the top. 19/5 minus, same method, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, 3/2. Now, 5 and 2. I'm going to use the method where you just multiply these numbers together. They aren't very big numbers, so this should be fairly simple to do. 5 times 2 gives us a common denominator of 10. So multiplying top and bottom by 2 and top and bottom over here by 5, I am able to change these fractions. 19/5 turns into 38/10, and 3/2 will turn into 15/10. Now this is just a simple subtraction problem, keeping the denominator the same always. 38 minus 15 is 23. Positive. Now again, remember, whenever you're given a question that starts as a mixed fraction, try to end the question as a mixed fraction. How many 10s go in 23? I know that 2 of them go in there, and giving us a remainder of 3/10. And that's how you do it. So that is the lesson on adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Good luck finding the least common denominator.